Welcome back to the Infinite and Beyond MIT Alumni Show. And of course, I'm your trusted host, Rob Kalwarowsky. And joining us back again, the founder of Growth Owl, Zoss Kraska, is with us. Lori, thanks for joining us again.
Oh, it's great to be back. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. And the reason we had Lori back was we did a show earlier this year about the fear around asking for money. And of course, this is something that I work on with my founders and entrepreneurs who are raising money, as well as folks that are trying to get raises and some of the nonprofits I work with. Obviously, Lori does this professionally with her nonprofits. And so we wanted to have and expand on the first round of the conversation. And so Lori, one of the first key elements we identified in the first round was just skills.
Yeah.
Where should folks start if they want to build the skills around how to go out and raise money for their projects?
Yeah, I think naturally the first inclination as professionals is, okay, if we lack sales skill, we should find sales training. And not that that's wrong, but I want people to take a step and try to find tools, resources, training that meets them where they're at. And here's what I mean by that. And I know, Rob, you can completely appreciate this because we both work with leaders of organizations. So for instance, if I'm working with the leader of an association who has a very strong organizational background, finance, operations, and just had a meeting with the board, and they're kind of talking about how could we better bring in sponsorship dollars or fundraise for the association's nonprofit, what have you. And you are somebody that has the background that's very operations heavy, very finance heavy. Most likely, you've not been in sales situations before. That looks very different. That's a very different type of sales training or sales resourcing you're looking for versus somebody that's a leader who's been in sales roles before. Maybe they even sold B2B services, products, software as a service, and then went into an organization as a leader. They can effectively just kind of jump in and start rolling, right? Maybe with a little bit of mentorship from us. But you can see how those would be very different. And sometimes the issue with sales training, the way it's sold, it doesn't always meet people where they're at. A lot of sales training will say, here are the things you need to know to be successful. Well, how do you know that until the person, the trainer really gets to know you, right? So that is a long-winded answer to your question. But I would say, the first thing to do is a little self-assessment. What part of sales kind of scares me the most? Is it the work you need to do to research, to prospect per se? Is it just the amount of time? Is it the time to try to get meetings on the calendar? Or maybe you're wondering, gee, do I even have what it takes to get meetings on the calendar? Or are you good with all of that? And then it turns into, but I just don't know if I can make the ask. So those are all different things, right, Rob? So when you ask that question, that's really the first thing that hit in my head, because when I am working with leaders, usually I have to do a little, for lack of a better term, deprogramming of former sales or sales workshops they might have gone to that just didn't resonate. They're trying to kind of be the square peg to fit in the round hole that they were taught to be, but it just wasn't working. It's really up to us to meet them where they're at, to give them what they need.
It's interesting you say that, right? I think there's a little bit of a misnomer about what salespeople are.
Yeah.
And the way I approach this is, and I'm not a sales expert, of course, but the way I approach this with a lot of folks is I approach this through the lens of relationship building.
Yeah.
And so, especially when you're raising money from investors or venture capitalists, like if a VC invests in your company, that relationship is going to go for 10 to 12 years.
Absolutely.
And so it's not like, hey, I got $1 million, now I get to just build my company and
right.
They're gone, right?
Yes.
It's like you're basically choosing somebody to work with for 10 years, which is longer than most marriages.
Yes, so true, right? Yes.
And
Yes.
so like where I start with 90% of my clients is just like, what is your branding statement
Yeah.
for either you yourself or your business or what you're trying to do?
Yeah.
And so that's a simple way of just thinking of like, what is the thing that differentiates me? What do I want folks to know about me or my business or my product? And then how do I go out and position that? And then simply it's who are 10 people that can help you achieve that your goal, and build relationships with those 10 people. They could be investors, they can be like, you can run this playbook as somebody who just wants to get promoted at the company you work at today.
Oh,
Right?
sure.
But, raising money, it's like, who are 10 investors that you would want to work with? Or in Lori, your case, like, who are 10 companies that align with the mission that you're trying to be on with your company or your nonprofit, right?
Yeah.
That's a simple way of just distilling that big amorphous thing into some practical steps that you can take that'll take you like probably an hour. And then you can focus on, okay, how do I meet these people? Where are they at?
Yeah.
Can I just outreach to them on LinkedIn? Like, what does that look like? And then go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are really, really good strategies, Rob. I love that. And, I love starting with the mission. And it's not just the mission of your organization, but I like that you also talked about what is your personal mission? You are an extension of the organization. And I know we've talked about that before. You have to have belief in your organization and belief in yourself, right? So I love that you emphasize kind of starting there first. I think the other thing that I would add when you're talking about who are these people, who are kind of the group you want to reach out to, and then who are the corporations or organizations you want to reach out to, start small. Really start small. I think one of the things that organizations or leaders will do is they'll get really excited. They'll put a list together. Oh, Lori, I'm so jazzed. Had a great time in your training. I want to put a list together of 50 companies. I'm going to outreach in 20 days. No. That's too much. We've learned through tons of psychological behavior and just knowing yourself that when we're starting new, the best way to experience success is some small wins, right? So to have small wins is to make things very achievable. So fitting things into your week, into your day. When I'm working with clients, I say if let's start with like 5 companies that you take one per week to just take a look at. And like you said, maybe even it's just an hour a week. I mean, that's honestly a good way to start, because if it was an hour you weren't using before to work on some sort of sales activity, that is kind of building muscle memory into you to keep it going, right? So I think that's the only thing I would already add to your good advice. Start with small, achievable goals to get moving.
To just jump off your why statement, which
Yeah.
I love, this is a way you can use to overcome some of the fear or the reticence of doing these reaching out. And
Yeah.
like that, I mean, the overcoming the fear of rejection, right? Like,
Yes.
you're going to get rejected.
Absolutely.
That's part of sales.
Oh yeah.
And it's not about like stuffing it down and like it hurts. Like, I get rejected in sales all the time.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like, if you connect to the reason why you're on this mission that you're on, what are you trying to impact in the world? Why are you building what you're building?
Yeah.
Where is that money going to help you make an impact? That helps you get that internal motivation to keep going.
Yeah.
And eventually that's when you build the habits, which is what Lori's talking about, right? Where habits are built somewhere between 21 and 66 days.
Yeah.
And so it's like, continue to build that habit of like 5 or 10 minutes a day. I mean, of course you can expand that, but start small and then build that until it just becomes what you do. And then that's the easiest way to keep the success rolling.
Yeah. I actually have run a cohort with a group of voiceover artists that are looking to engage with decision makers, especially to choose humans over AI. That's a whole other story. But, this is fresh in my memory because we had our 3rd session last night, and I had one of the voiceover artists say to me, Lori, you're utilizing your tools and I can see how they're working, But even just making the change of changing the language, changing the verbiage, the way that you had kind of directed us to, I was a little scared. I was a little scared to make the leap to try it. But I find that it's worse. It's all in my head. Like, it's not as bad once you do it, right? And it's so true. Everyone's kind of got their little anxiety in some way to try something new. And I'm saying all this, Rob, because it goes back to what you were saying. We all will experience rejection. And I think the best way to experience rejection is to put yourself in a position where you are being rejected, because it makes it, I don't want to say it makes it easier, but again, I take it back to that muscle memory. As you're getting rejected, you're going to deal with it more effectively each time. But also, rejection is also a great filter for you. Then immediately if they're rejecting it, they're not in good alignment for your mission or for you or for what you mutually want to accomplish. So it should allow you to freely move on. That's much better than kind of getting ghosted or just kind of being out there and not hearing anything, right? So I think that as much as it might be a little scary, do the thing that might cause you a little anxiety. It's probably not going to be as bad as you think it is. And the more you try it, the more you do it. I think that, as you said, that in terms of creating that habit, that consistency, it's going to really, really start to pay off the more you do it.
That kind of brings us to the second point that we already talked about, which is this identity fear. And this is the part where, and what I would ask that voiceover artist, right, is like, what is it afraid of? Like, what is that part of you afraid of? Is it the rejection? Is it not belonging? Is it I'm not good enough? Like, dig into that fear to understand what is the actual root cause of it. And often what you'll find is something that's, one, is completely illogical, but two, is just something that you can work with.
Yes.
And that's where these fears become manageable. And then they actually just often, they go away really quickly. Like, I work with folks, and sometimes stuff like imposter syndrome, 77% of executives have imposter syndrome. And it's like, often in like 1 or 2 sessions, we can make a huge dent in something like that. And that prevents them from asking for money. Or, entrepreneurs, it's like, maybe I don't deserve to raise money, or I'm not good enough, or I'm unworthy. Like, sometimes these core beliefs about ourselves, they prevent us from asking.
That's right.
It's not that you're going to like never feel that again, but it's like with a few sessions, a little bit of inner work, you unlock the ability to not approach that with this fear-driven way. And so you're not like gripping the wheel and kind of hoping your way through it. It just becomes what you do. And the rejection doesn't hurt as much. And I think that's the big piece, is like, once you can align your subconscious with your goals, things start to happen a lot quicker because you're not pushing a boulder up a hill anymore.
That's right. Yeah. I think, let's just call this out. Sometimes there's comfort in staying small, right? And it's maybe staying small is not the term, but there's comfort in not trying something new to kind of help you grow. And that's something that we actually discussed in our session last night. And to answer your question, in terms of where is the fear coming from, many of them were very honest and talked about just value. Some of them are afraid to talk about, what is their true rate card value, and feeling like they might need to discount their services. So, that goes back to your internal value, that you are worth it. You are and these are professionals, Rob, that they didn't just start. They've been around. They've worked with very successful campaigns, won awards, and they're still questioning about, is it okay for me to ask for more money? So this goes beyond asking for money. It's asking for what you're worth. So that goes back to our work on helping people see their value and understand that it is valuable, because sometimes we're so close to it, we just think, oh, this is something we do every day, But if you're an onlooker looking in, actually what you're doing is extremely valuable. And in what we're talking about today in terms of asking for money on behalf of your organization, your organization has value. The key is just finding what value connects to the person or the entity that you're talking to. That's the most important part of the work in terms of the research. Once you've kind of dealt with your personal stuff, what is the why? I like to say, why does this person or this entity resonate most for what you're asking for? And if you can answer that, most of the time your conversations will continue, or you get the sale, one or the other. So that's the greatest competitive advantage right now, is just to have a really clear definition as to why you specifically in your organization or what you're doing connects with what the corporation or what that person is trying to achieve.
100%. And here's something for a lot of the technical folks out there is you want some statistics, you want some data points, like you absolutely want all that. And you need a story that connects to emotions.
That's right. Yeah.
And the reason for this is actually our brains make decisions based on emotions before we even get to the frontal lobe.
That's great.
So just from that perspective, right, is like we've subconsciously decided based on our emotions and our mindset before we can logically process any information. And so when I think about this as the speaker, there's a framework that I use. It's called SPARK. Basically, it's statistic, picture, anecdote, research, and then I forget what the K stands for. But basically, that's how I craft my mini stories within my big keynotes. Is like I'll lead off with a statistic, then I'll have a picture, then I'll tell a short little story, then I'll have some research, and then I'll wrap it up with a story again, right? And so like that, those mini sections take maybe about 5 minutes. And so when you're thinking about pitching to somebody, of course, yes, you want data, but you also want to hook them in on why is it important to them? Why does it connect to their values and their impact that they want to have and all these other things? So then you can get that full package, and that'll give you the best chance to appeal to both folks that want to have that technical point of view, but also the folks that are, that are going to feel their way through things.
Yeah.
Which we do both.
I love that you talked about storytelling. That is so important to making connection. I mean, purpose-driven organizations that I work with are known to use that. Talk about the kids that you're helping, talk about the animals you're helping, to help us envision it. And if you think about it, storytelling is one of the oldest forms of communication. Even before people were speaking, there were cave drawings, right? So, they're stories, and they told a story. So stories are something that we can all relate to. It helps give us the visual picture in our minds. And to your point, I absolutely love that. And I think what's great about story is you don't need complex sales training for that. You know how to tell a story. You are closest to whatever it is that you're looking to get funded. You know the story. It's just packaging your story in a way that's going to connect with your decision maker, whoever that is.
The one final thing with this, right, is the story needs to fit your audience.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so often people, even speakers, right, we think that like, hey, my story is the best, right?
Yeah.
But it's like you need to adjust your story based on the audience. What do they want to hear? What are they interested about? What point are you trying to make with them? Because ultimately, and this is what Kim Scott talks about in leadership is it doesn't matter what you say. It's all about how it lands in the other person's experience.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I even think about taking it from a speaking point of view. Although I do a fair amount of speaking, I also think about when I'm going to conferences and I'm in the audience. And there are some keynotes that are great. They blow me away. There are others where I'm like, well, I could have gotten more sleep this morning. Why? Because I feel as though that sometimes speakers will come in with their keynote and don't, to your point, they don't adapt it well to the room. Or you could tell that they have a framework and then you can see insert connection point here. Like you could just see it. I don't know. At least I can. So relating that back to sales, before you go into any type of conversation, you want to make sure that you've done your research about who you're meeting with, whether it be personal or whether it be business, and then see what you can find out about that person's communication style. You know, if you go to their LinkedIn profile and you see it's very long and they're talking a lot about themselves, okay, that usually is a tell that they're going to be very detailed in their communication. If you go to the LinkedIn profile and you see very brief, bullet points, you want to come with brief bullet points, right? So I think it just goes back to knowing your audience, as you said, and it doesn't matter if your audience is one person or if it's a group of 300, you're still looking to persuade to your point of view. So it's a good tip to have that preparation. Yeah.
My favorite are the speakers that show up and say, "Hi, my name is Rob," and then list their qualifications for 10 minutes and then go, "This is what we're going to be speaking about today."
Yeah. 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 I mean, I have had conversations with colleagues about, I know I was kind of having some fun saying I could have slept in, but that is an actual conversation. Are you going to the keynote? I think I'm just going to sleep in, because most of the, and I say that if for those of you listening that maybe don't go to a lot of conferences, the big keynote tends to be a kickoff in the morning. And then there's the whole afternoon, like end of the conference keynote. That's a rough one. Because I got to tell you, lately I've been going to conferences and people are leaving early, like they don't stay for the whole thing. So, it all goes back to just knowing your audience and being able to resonate. So then when people do hear you, whether it's in a sales environment or if it's a speaking environment, the word on the street is very positive about you and people will want to hear from you.
Yeah, the closing keynote's a tough spot. I did one a few years ago, and I think there was around 100 people at the conference, and then I was the closing thing, and people wanted. It was in Atlanta, so people wanted to get out early, and I think there was maybe 20 people at the end when I was going.
Yeah. Oh
and
my
they were all
God.
vendors because they were all at the booths around the room.
My
and I was just like, it's hard to succeed when nobody cares.
That's rough.
Yeah.
That is
But
rough.
enough about me bombing.
Yeah, no. It's an interesting trend, and it is sales related though. Because I do talk to organizations that have conferences and, they're wondering, from a sales perspective to sell the conference, what type of speakers now are resonating? And that I think the honest answer is it just depends on who your group is. Again, knowing your audience.
Lori, the last point we want to hit is about exposure. What if they say no?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what happens if they say no?
Yeah. So we kind of
Which inevitably they will.
Right. Oh, yeah. We kind of hit this a little bit. First of all, no is your second best answer. You do hear this in a lot of sales trainings, but that's true because it allows you to move on. But the problem with no for some people is it's the rejection. What did I do wrong? Right. And I would say 90% of the time, it's not something that you did wrong. It's just something was off. Most of the time, maybe it's budget, maybe it's timing. It could just be you have a decision maker who's just not interested, but you have to learn to not take it personally. And that's why I said earlier, the more rejection you go through, the better it's going to be for you because you're going to not take it personally. You're just going to move on. First you don't succeed, you try and try again, as we were told, get back on that bike when you're learning to ride your bicycles. So there is definitely something to that usually it does take a few no's to get to a yes. So But taking it back to, I know, some of the good work that you do and some of the work that I do, you have to think about what is it about that no that is so scary to you? You know, is it something that takes you back to you maybe you even had an early sales interaction that was so horrible that stayed with you for years? That happens with a lot of professionals. A lot of professionals. I remember working for a senior director years ago when I sold broadcasting, and he'd always bring up this one story about how he was not prepared in this meeting and how it lost him his job. He would talk about this all the time. So obviously that is a great example of something that stayed with him and has been in his mind for years. So, that stuff happens to us. But yeah, so going back to your question, I think the first way to deal with no is just know that they're a reality. Not everybody is going to like or resonate with what you have to say, and that's okay. But see it as a great way to filter out, this was not aligned with what I wanted to do, with what the program wanted to do, so we move forward. And the more no's you go through, the more you're going to learn who your ideal customer profile really is.
100%. The other piece of this, right, is like sometimes the no's are signals that your messaging needs to be adjusted.
Oh, I love
right?
that. Yes.
So of course, it's not like if you meet with one person and they're like, hey, Rob, we're not a fit. Like that doesn't mean you need to overhaul your entire business. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you get into like multiple hundreds and you're like, I haven't gotten anything, then there might be opportunity to look at, am I pitching to the right folks? Like, is it the right room of people?
Yeah.
Or is my messaging something that's not right?
Yeah.
And so like I had to learn this, right, as somebody who I used to work in engineering. So I started speaking a lot in engineering and trying to sell coaching in the engineering space, and it wasn't working.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was like the folks that I was in front of, like the maintenance managers and the reliability engineers. One is they didn't have budget for leadership development.
Yeah.
And the other thing is they didn't have pull in the organization to get that approved.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't working.
Yeah.
And I had to pivot, and now I work with more entrepreneurs. Some of them are actually in manufacturing, but I also work with like tech executives, right?
Yeah.
And they have budgets for these things. And so one is, of course, the mindset of rejection, that part, you have to work through that. I can help you do that. But working through that fear, the other part is like when you get rejection, it's just feeding back to your parts that you're not dead.
Yeah.
It's like literally a thing, right?
Yeah.
So like what Lori was talking about with that executive, right? It's like he needs to go visit back in his mind that part of him that's really worried about saying the wrong thing and getting fired, and just be like, hey, one is it's 2026 and it's all good. The other thing is I'm still alive and I have another job and it's all good.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I like what you said earlier about, maybe it's a time for us to pause and maybe think about something different to say or different to position. I think something that I've noticed, and in terms of working with business executives specifically, a lot of them are just so married to their pitch deck. And oh my gosh, it's like, you mean there's no slides? No, I think that, some of the best first conversations I've had, and when I'm coaching my clients to get in front of corporations, that first 30-minute intro meeting, I tell them to bring nothing. And
I have 400 slides.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's like, let's just talk. And it's just so, I tell you, when we do go to those meetings, or the feedback I get after they've attended the meeting and call me, they tell me about how people just kind of relax and like, oh, great, this truly is just a one-on-one conversation. There will be time for pitch decks later if they're needed. At the most, I say, maybe if you want to bring an infographic or a summary paragraph with you as a leave behind, but not during the conversation. Decision makers, people who have money that are funding whatever your project is, as well as decision makers that kind of own the money in a corporation, they want to work with people that know what they're doing and that truly are authorities. You don't really exert that when you're stuck on a pitch deck. So that's my just very granular piece of advice. Just go into your first meeting without a pitch deck. Just, make it more conversational. And I really think that might at least stall a no, or give the decision maker more pause to not want to provide a no, where maybe they even thought going in, I'm just going to take this meeting. I don't know. But if your approach is to take it like a conversation to show that you are a leader in your space, you've got authority, you know what you're talking about, they might just want to keep the conversation going, maybe not in that moment, but keep it moving forward. So that's one tip that I think can be helpful. The more that you can show your authority in a respectful way, that could help with the no's that maybe you were getting because you were using too many sales tools.
The last tip I have for this one, and then we'll end, is no doesn't mean no forever. It means no right now.
That's right.
And this I see a lot in my own business is I'll do a talk or I'll engage with somebody and it's a no. And then a year later, they reach out and they're like,
Yes.
Rob, I need help.
Yes.
And I'm sure you get this too, Lori.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so it's like, it doesn't mean it's no forever. It just means sometimes the timing is off or the budget's off or they don't need you right now and they can in the future. So it's, yes, it hurts in that moment and maybe you wanted to close that deal in that moment. But it's also like, keep that relationship, keep that, keep some touch points, and then you never know what happens in the future.
That's right. And this may get a little woo-woo for people, but I'm just going to say it. The more you try to push the outcome, which so many sales trainings will try to teach you to do, I think the more resistance happens and then your chances of success decline. There is something to be said about, okay, I can exert my energy as to position myself in my organization as to what the why is. We've talked a lot about that today. And then you just have to leave it and let it land. You shouldn't be following up every 3 days. Just following up, just following up, just following up. That's a great way to make a decision maker or funder not so happy, right? At some point, you have to kind of let it go. Let it kind of, brew within your decision maker's mind and let it kind of organically grow from there. And I just find when people do make the choice to kind of let go a little bit in that process, first, they're very scared. But then when they start practicing that, interestingly enough, some good things start to happen. I bet you can resonate with this, Rob. I'm going to bet that you resonate with this.
It's one of the things I work on a lot with my leaders, Lori, is the transition from fear to self-energy.
Yeah.
And you see this a lot, actually, also in nonprofit. Mm-hmm. Dr. Richard Schwartz writes about it in his book, No Bad Parts, is the reason we get into these spaces is because we were hurt.
Yeah.
And so I started this way too, was like I had a toxic boss and then I was like, I don't like this. And then, when I got into leadership coaching, it was like, I got to get rid of these asshole bosses.
Yeah.
And, it's like, and that doesn't land well with folks.
No.
The other thing that doesn't land with folks is like desperation. And that's a lot of what the fear-driven stuff is.
Yep.
And I used to say this to my therapist, is like, I need a win, like I need a breath of fresh air. And people feel that, they sense that, and they don't like that.
Yeah. I have a colleague and a friend, Carrie McIntyre. I have to give her props on this one. We do sales trainings together, and she likes to say they can smell your commission breath a mile away if you are a commission salesperson. But I have to give her props on that one. I like it.
I like that one too.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? And so it's like, especially in the purpose-driven space, right?
Yeah.
If your mission is of impacting the world, it's selling the future of that better world.
Yeah.
It's not, I am fighting against this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. I love that.
And so, Lori, of course, folks can find you thegrowthowl.com. They can follow you on LinkedIn. I'll put your LinkedIn in the podcast notes. Is there anywhere else you want folks to find you?
Really, my website is great. You said thegrowthowl.com. I'm on LinkedIn a lot, so it's a great place to find me. And anyone's also welcome to email me. I do check all of my emails directly. It's lori@thegrowthowl.com.
Amazing. I'll drop that in the podcast notes too.
Great.
And then, of course, if you want to find me, robkalwarowsky.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. It's all in the podcast notes. And if you want Lori and I to speak at your event, reach out and we'll definitely do that.
Absolutely.
So, everyone, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all next week.
Thanks, Rob.